You thought I'd break? No. I evolve. And evolution has claws.
I realized my marriage was over the moment I saw my own name filed under exit plan. Jessica had fallen asleep on the couch that night, one arm thrown over her face, empty wineglass on the coffee table, TV flickering silently in the background. To anyone else, she looked peaceful. To me, she looked like a stranger camped out in my living room, wearing my wife's face. Her purse was on the floor by the armchair, half open, papers sticking out. Normally, I wouldn't touch her things. For years, I thought that was what trust meant. No checking phones, no rifling through bags, no reading over shoulders. But by that point, trust already felt like a dead word between us, like a password to an account that had been closed a long time ago. I don't even know what made me look. Instinct, numb curiosity, or maybe some part of me had finally stopped pretending everything was fine. I knelt down, pulled the bag closer, and started pushing aside the usual mess. Lipstick, receipts, charger cable, gum wrappers. Then I saw the stack of neatly clipped documents. On top, in her careful handwriting, a sticky note. To review Monday. Fine. Work stuff, I thought. But underneath that stack, there was another folder. A simple black one, no sticker, no logo, just one label on the tab, written in blue ink. Exit plan. My first thought was stupid and hopeful. Maybe this is some project name, something corporate and boring. Crisis, exit strategy, emergency plan, whatever. But my hand was already moving before my brain could finish that excuse. I opened it. Page 1, my full name, Ethan Carter. Page 2, current joint assets, overview. Page 3, projected division post-separation. And that was just the start. She said the documents in her bag were work reports. But why was one folder named Exit Plan? When I opened it, I saw my name on every page. She wasn't preparing for our future. She was preparing for my absence. There it was, in black ink, bullet points and timelines. A mapped-out future where I was neatly cut out of my own life. My stomach dropped so hard I actually had to grab the edge of the coffee table to steady myself. I could hear her breathing behind me. Slow, even, completely relaxed. My loving wife, peacefully asleep while a step-by-step manual for removing me from her world sat in her bag like some quiet little bomb. I flipped through the pages, faster now. Recommended timeline, 6 to 9 months. Prepare emotional narrative. Emphasize incompatibility, emotional distance, lack of support. Beside that line, in the margin, she'd written by hand, "He'll believe this. He always thinks he's the problem." I actually felt my face burn when I read that. You know, that crawling heat that climbs your neck when you realize someone has been studying you, not to love you better, but to manipulate you more efficiently? That there were notes about our house, which lawyer to contact first, which mutual friends she assumed would take her side. There were even talking points about how to frame me to her parents so she could protect her image. And then there was a section that made my hands start shaking. Relationship with Ryan, risk assessment. Ryan, her friend from marketing. The guy she'd sworn was just a coworker she occasionally grabbed coffee with. The guy she told me I was paranoid about whenever I mentioned his name. Under his name, in Jessica's neat handwriting, were phrases that made my chest feel tight. Already emotionally attached. More stability, more ambition. Understands my needs better. Potential long-term partner once separation is finalized. I stared at those words until they blurred. Emotionally attached. More stability. Understands my needs better. So that was it. While I was killing myself working late shifts, fixing the leaking sink, trying to remember her favorite takeout place when she was too tired to cook, she was taking notes on how to replace me with a newer, shinier version. And not just replace me, rewrite the story so that I was the villain, the problem, the dead weight she had no choice but to escape. Somewhere behind me, she shifted on the couch and sighed in her sleep. I looked back at her. This woman had cried in my arms when her promotion fell through. She'd slept on my chest after her grandfather died. We'd talked about kids. We'd planned trips we never took. She'd looked me in the eyes and said, "You're my home, more times than I could count. And all this time, she was drafting instructions on how to pack me up and kick me out of that home like old furniture. The worst part? The tone of those notes. Detached. Clinical. Like I wasn't her husband, but a project with tasks, deadlines, risk factors. There was another page, and I almost didn't want to turn it, but I did. Managing Ethan's reaction. He will initially be shocked, maybe angry. Stay calm. Make him feel unreasonable. Repeat phrases. We grew apart. You stopped listening. This isn't about anyone else. Do not mention Ryan until separation is underway. In the margin, another handwritten add-on. He trusts my version of events. Use that. I exhaled so sharply it sounded like a laugh. Quiet, ugly one. Use that. It hit me then. Every conversation we'd had in the last few months, every sudden mood swing, every time she'd pulled away in bed, every late meeting, I'm just exhausted. None of it was random. She'd been rehearsing, testing lines, polishing the story where she was the brave, misunderstood heroine and I was the emotionally distant husband she just couldn't reach anymore. And somewhere in that story, there was a man named Ryan who understood her needs better. I closed the folder slowly and just sat there on the rug, folder in my lap, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would wake her. You'd think the first feeling would be rage. It wasn't. It was the strange, hollow clarity, like someone had turned on the lights in a room I'd been stumbling through for years. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I hadn't imagined the coldness, the lies wrapped in soft tones. The way her eyes slid away just a second too long when I asked where she'd been. She wasn't planning to leave me someday. She was already in the process of erasing me. On the couch, she muttered something in her sleep and rolled to the side, her phone slipping from her hand to the cushion. For a second, my eyes locked on that phone. If she had an exit plan on paper, what exactly was she hiding on that screen? That was the moment something in me shifted. I wasn't just a confused husband anymore. I was a man standing in the middle of a crime scene, finally seeing the fingerprints on every surface. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This night was not going to end with me quietly putting the folder back and pretending I'd never seen it. I picked up Jessica's phone like it was evidence, not a piece of her everyday life. Face down on the cushion, still warm from her hand. For years, I never cared about passwords. I'd brag to friends, we don't go through each other's phones. That's real trust. Funny how stupid that sounds when you're kneeling beside a folder labeled exit plan, with your name stamped on every page. I pressed the screen. It lit up. No lock, of course. Why would she bother? In her mind, I was still the same idiot who believed every smooth excuse she fed me. The same guy she'd written about in that folder. He trusts my version of events. Use that. A preview banner slid down from the top as if the universe wanted to make a point. Ryan, you get home safe, Jess? Thinking about you. My grip tightened. Ryan. Again. That name felt like a stain. I opened their chat. The thread stretched back months. At first, it was professional meeting times, client notes. Then the tone shifted. A thanks again, you saved me today. A you're the only one who really gets it. A late night, still awake. A heart emoji. Then more. So much more. I started scrolling faster, my chest pounding. I wish I could fall asleep next to you instead of going back to that house. He thinks everything is fine. He's so clueless it actually makes me angry. You deserve better than that, Jess. You know it. I know. That's why I'm working on the plan. I just need to time it right. The plan. Not a plan. The plan. My eyes kept jumping over phrases, grabbing fragments like broken glass. You make me feel alive. I hate pretending when he's around. Once everything's set, we won't have to hide. He'll blame himself. He always does. That's the beauty of it. I stopped scrolling. That line. That's the beauty of it. Sat in my head like ice. Behind me, Jessica snored softly. My wife, who apparently found beauty in designing a clean, painless exit where I'd walk away thinking I was the problem. A photo popped up farther down the thread. It was them at a bar, pressed too close together for coworkers. His arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. Her eyes were bright, alive in a way I hadn't seen around me in months. She told me she was stuck late at the office, finishing reports. She'd come home that night smelling like perfume and thin excuses. I scrolled further and found something that twisted the knife. A video. I hesitated, then pressed play. The sound was low, but I could hear her laugh. Jessica's real laugh, the one she hadn't used with me in a long time. The camera shook as Ryan pulled her close. I couldn't see everything, but I saw enough. The way she leaned into him. The way his hand disappeared somewhere it had no right to be. The way she whispered, "We shouldn't not hear," while doing absolutely nothing to stop him. I paused the video and looked at her. Same face, same person, completely different woman. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, phone in one hand, folder in the other. Minutes, maybe. Long enough for the anger to finally catch up with the shock. A thought ran clean and sharp through my mind. She's not confused. She's not lost. She's not struggling with us. She's calculated. Jessica stirred and exhaled sharply, like her body was annoyed with the position of the couch. Her eyes cracked open for a second, unfocused. "Ethan?" she mumbled. I had just enough time to put her phone back beside her hand and slide the folder under the couch. My heart hammered in my throat. "Yeah," I said, my voice sounding weirdly calm. "You fell asleep out here." She blinked, frowned as if I'd inconvenienced her somehow. "What time is it?" "Late." She pulled the blanket higher over herself and rolled to face the couch back. "Turn off the light. You're pacing. It's annoying. Annoying." Not "Hey, are you okay?" Not "Why are you kneeling by my bag?" Just mild irritation, like I was background noise in a life she'd already started living without me. I stood there for a moment, staring at the back of her head. "I was looking for something," I said. She didn't move. "You always make a big deal out of nothing, Ethan. Go to bed." Just like that. A reflex. An instinct. Minimize me. Dismiss me. Make my feelings sound overdramatic before I even voiced them. It was almost impressive how easily the lie slid out of her. A preemptive strike against any suspicion I might have had. I turned off the lamp. The room fell into soft darkness, the TV glow painting her in pale blue. She was already half asleep again by the time I stepped away. But I wasn't, because now I knew three things. She had an exit plan. She had a replacement. And she had no idea that the man she thought she was playing had finally read the script. That was the night I decided something quietly, without a speech, without drama. If she wanted to treat our marriage like a strategy game, she was about to find out I knew how to play too. The next morning, Jessica woke up acting like nothing had happened. She stretched, yawned, shuffled toward the kitchen. Hair a mess, voice scratchy. Wearing the faded college sweatshirt she always claimed she'd never throw away. Once upon a time, that sweatshirt made me think of memories. Late-night study sessions, cheap pizza, our first apartment, laughter echoing down hallways we couldn't afford to heat. Now it just looked like camouflage. A costume worn by someone who still wanted to appear familiar while quietly gutting the life behind the scenes. "Are you making coffee?" she asked, as if she hadn't spent months drafting an escape plan from our marriage like a corporate acquisition. "Yeah," I replied, staring into the brewing pot, my hands tighter on the counter than they needed to be. "Good," she said. "I have a meeting at 9. Big presentation. You know how it is." I almost laughed. I wondered if her big presentation involved Ryan. Maybe at some hotel with complimentary breakfast muffins and a do not disturb sign hanging like a declaration of ownership. "Right," I answered. "Work reports and all that." Her head jerked slightly, just a twitch, but it was enough. She froze for half a second before recovering. "What?" she asked too casually. "Nothing," I said. "Just remember what you said last night." Her eyes narrowed, searching my face. Jessica was good at lying, frighteningly good, but even the best liar hates uncertainty. They panic when they don't know what you know. She sipped her coffee. "You're acting weird." "I'm just tired," I replied, and it wasn't even a lie. Betrayal doesn't just hurt. It exhausts you. It drains your bones, makes your breath feel heavier. like every inhale comes with terms and conditions. She shrugged and started scrolling through her phone. I watched her thumbs skim messages, watched her lips tighten when she didn't find what she expected. A reply from Ryan, probably. For once, I held the advantage. She had no idea. By the time she left for work, she was back in performance mode. Heels clicking, perfume strong, smile plastered on. Goodbye kiss offered like payment for compliance. When her lips touched my cheek, I felt nothing, just cold skin pretending warmth. As soon as the door shut behind her, I sat down at the table with the folder. This time I wasn't trembling. This time I was studying. Exit plan, asset allocation, emotional narrative management. A script in which she played the misunderstood heroine escaping a loveless marriage. A story where she was the victim, and I was the boring, inattentive burden dragging her down. There was actually a bullet point titled, "Avoid appearing guilty. Emphasize emotional neglect." Emotional neglect. I laughed out loud. A short, sharp laugh that sounded dangerous in the quiet kitchen. I'd spent years asking if she was okay, if she needed anything, if work was too stressful. I'd bought flowers after her bad days, planned surprise dinners, taken on extra shifts so she could focus on her career. And she wrote emotional neglect like it was gospel. It was diabolical and brilliant. A lie designed to be believable because it preyed on the one thing husbands are always accused of, not noticing enough. My phone buzzed. A message from my friend Tyler. "Game night Friday? You in?" Tyler had always liked Jessica. Thought she was sharp, pretty, ambitious. If he saw this folder, he'd swallow his own tongue. Hell, if anyone saw it, they'd swear I was exaggerating. People think betrayal comes with fireworks, kisses caught under moonlight, lipstick on a shirt collar. No one imagines betrayal documented like a business proposal. Suddenly, something inside me clicked. Jessica didn't just betray me emotionally. She invested in it. She calculated ROI on my downfall. She wrote instructions on how to destroy me without getting her hands dirty. And that's when the anger started to melt into something sharper, something colder, something dangerously calm. I wasn't going to stop her. I wasn't going to beg her. I wasn't going to confront her as the blindsided husband she expected to manipulate. No. If Jessica was building an exit plan, I was building something she didn't see coming, a countermeasure. But first, I needed proof. Real proof. Not just words on paper. Not implications. Evidence. Enough to crush the narrative she'd prepared like a screenplay. Because if she wanted to write me as the villain in her story, I was about to take over the pen. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. For the first time in months, my voice felt steady. "Hi," I said. "I need to schedule a consultation. The sooner, the better." He asked, "Is everything okay?" And I smiled. Not happily, not triumphantly, but with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. "No," I said, "but it will be." I didn't tell Jessica about the lawyer. I didn't slam doors, didn't scream, didn't throw accusations like grenades. That's the mistake most betrayed men make. They react. They detonate. They confront without preparation, giving the enemy time to rewrite the story, cry crocodile tears, twist blame, or worse, destroy evidence. Jessica expected me to be emotional. I decided to be strategic. For the next few days, I watched her like someone studying an animal that didn't realize the cage door had already locked behind it. The first change I noticed was her phone. She began keeping it face down more often, fingers tightening around it whenever she picked it up. Her messages became shorter, her replies delayed, her smile forced. The guilt wasn't eating her. She was feeding it sugar, shaping it, refining it into a weapon she could later use against me. Guilt wasn't her burden. It was her tool. 2 nights later, she came home late again. No apology, no explanation. Just the casual arrogance of someone who assumed she still lived in the world she built from lies. A world where I was too blind, too trusting, too predictable to ever see behind the curtains. But this time, she found me waiting at the kitchen table. She froze in the doorway, eyes flicking to the clock as if it mattered. I could see the gears turning in her mind. searching for the right tone, the right lie, the right emotional foundation for whatever story she planned to drop on me. "Why are you awake?" she asked, voice flat, already annoyed that my existence wasn't aligning with her schedule. "Couldn't sleep," I replied calmly. She opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of water. Her hand trembled very slightly, but enough for me to notice. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of losing control. Control isn't power. Control is the illusion of inevitable outcome, and I just shattered hers. "You've been distant lately?" I said, letting the sentence hang like a hook. She didn't miss a beat. "Ethan, you always think something's wrong. You're projecting again." Projecting. A clinical, pre-packed accusation meant to invalidate my perception before I even expressed it. She'd rehearsed that word. "What am I projecting?" I asked. "That I'm unhappy. That I'm hiding something. You always do this when you feel insecure." There it was, the emotional narrative she'd planned. If she could make my suspicions look like insecurity, she could frame everything else as a symptom of my flaws. Classic psychological judo. I didn't argue. Arguing gives liars oxygen. "I just want transparency," I said. She scoffed. "You're paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone." "Not us. Not we. Just me. Alone. The broken one." I leaned forward. "Are you sure that's what you want to say?" Her expression shifted, not to fear, but calculation. She sensed danger, but not the source. She tried to soften her tone, eyes widening slightly, voice dripping fake patience. "Ethan, you're imagining problems. Stop making drama. Stop making drama." My jaw clenched. That line wasn't for clarity, it was an instruction. A boundary marker. A way to define herself as calm, me as unstable. A courtroom tactic disguised as marital advice. She looked at me like someone evaluating whether the puppet was still dancing correctly. And then she slipped. It wasn't a grand confession. Not a dramatic reveal. Just a tiny moment, the kind only someone betrayed would catch. "You don't even know what's going on," she snapped, then instantly inhaled, eyes widening. A single second where her guard dropped and truth sprinted naked through the room. "What do you mean?" I asked softly. She froze. Her brain raced. Her mouth opened. And she lied. "I meant with my job. The new project. You don't understand it." Clean. Quick. Confident. A lie polished to a mirror shine. Except now I knew she wasn't improvising. She was repeating lines from the exit plan script. If I had confronted her last week, she would have won. She was prepared then. But now, every sentence she spoke was a crack in the foundation she believed was invisible. I stood up. "Jessica?" I said, my tone calm enough to make her uneasy. "Do you love me?" She blinked. Too long. Then smiled. The kind of smile people give before pushing someone off a cliff. "Of course I do," she replied. "Why would you even ask that?" Not yes. Not "I love you." Just a question answering a question. Deflection disguised as affection. I walked past her toward the stairs. She watched me go, unsure whether she'd won or lost. Halfway up, I stopped and looked back. "You're right about one thing," I said. "I didn't know what was going on." She smirked, victory swelling. "But now I do." The smirk died. That was the first moment she realized something had changed. Something was different. Someone was different. Not her. Me. And Jessica had absolutely no idea that her exit plan just turned into my opening move. The next week didn't feel like living, it felt like observing. I moved through the house like a ghost, silent but present, watching the cracks in Jessica's behavior widen into canyons she couldn't patch anymore. She tried harder than ever to look normal. She cooked dinner twice that week, something she hadn't done in months. She gave me compliments she pulled out of some dead handbook of domestic affection. "You look nice today. You've been working so hard lately." Empty words with no heartbeat. She was trying to maintain her cover. And nothing exposes a liar faster than when they suddenly start pretending to care. On Thursday, she suggested we talk about us, which almost made me laugh. The only reason liars want conversations is to control them. We sat on opposite sides of the living room, the air thick with all the things we weren't saying. She crossed her legs the way she always did when she was preparing a narrative, like a lawyer organizing her posture before addressing a jury. "Ethan," she began, "I feel like you've been distant, like something is wrong." There it was, the preemptive strike. She wanted me on the defensive before I could question her. Her tone was soft, nurturing, or at least mimicked the idea of nurturing. "What exactly feels wrong to you?" I asked. She blinked, momentarily thrown off. She expected denial. She expected me to beg, apologize, confess ignorance. She didn't expect composure. "I don't know," she said, stalling. "You just seem paranoid." The word hung there. Again, predictable, scripted. She was running plays from a manual she assumed I'd never seen. I leaned back. "Paranoid about what?" "Well," she hesitated. "You've been looking at me differently, and you've been staying quiet. It's like you're waiting for something." I stared directly into her eyes and watched it, that flicker of panic behind her pupils. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid of uncertainty. Uncertainty to a liar is like open flame to gasoline. "What do you think I'm waiting for?" I asked. Her throat tightened. "I don't know. Maybe you don't feel appreciated. Not remorse. Not confusion. Not fear of losing me. Damage control." She wasn't trying to fix the marriage. She was trying to preempt her exit, shape the breakup narrative, and maintain the victim badge she'd forged for herself. That was the moment something snapped inside me. Not loudly, not violently, but with a cold and final clarity. Jessica looked at me as if she owned the truth. But the truth isn't a possession. It's a predator. It waits. It stalks. And when the liar stops feeding it distractions, it strikes. "You know," I said quietly, "there's something strange about you accusing me of paranoia when you're the one acting like you're hiding a body." Her face went pale. Color drained like someone had yanked the power cord out of her soul. "What does that mean?" she demanded too quickly. "It means," I said, standing slowly, "that I finally see you." She stood as well, her composure cracking like thin ice. "Ethan, you're scaring me." That line, that tone, that manipulation. When liars lose control, they weaponize fear. But I didn't raise my voice, didn't move toward her, didn't accuse her of anything. I just smiled. "Are you scared of me knowing the truth?" I asked. "Or scared because your plan isn't working?" Jessica froze. Right there, in that silence, the truth bared its teeth. Her breathing changed, shallow, uneven. Her eyes darted, calculating exits, lies, angles. "What truth?" she whispered. That whisper, not curious, not defiant, terrified. I leaned close enough for her to feel the calm in my voice. "The one you wrote down." Her pupils blew wide. Her lips parted. A tremor ran through her right hand. She didn't ask what I meant. She asked nothing, because questions require innocence. And innocence was not something Jessica had owned for a very long time. I walked past her. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't call after me. She didn't perform the confusion she'd rehearsed. She just stood there, silent. A woman who'd suddenly realized her opponent had been reading the script all along. That night, she slept in the guest room. Not because she chose to, because liars can't sleep beside the truth once it wakes up. And now, the truth was wide awake and hungry. The next morning, Jessica behaved like a soldier returning to the battlefield after realizing the enemy had night vision goggles. She moved carefully, choosing silence like it was armor. No eye contact, no accusations, no questions. For a liar, silence isn't peace. It's reconnaissance. I watched her over breakfast as she tapped her spoon against the bowl, lost in thought, trying to assemble a version of reality where she was still ahead. That's the thing about people like her. They don't love truth, they love advantage. And when advantage slips, they scramble. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Ethan," she began, her voice artificially soft. "I feel like there's tension between us. Tension. As if we were a couple arguing over dinner plans instead of living inside a war she started months ago." I leaned back, calm. "There is." Her shoulders stiffened. She'd expected deflection, denial, maybe a joke. Not confirmation. What exactly is causing it? She asked, feigning innocence so poorly it hurt to watch. You, I answered. Her eyebrows shot upward. She hadn't prepared for that level of straightforwardness. She'd expected negotiation. She'd expected me to dance around her lies like I always had. The way you've been acting, I continued. The secrets, the planning. A tiny muscle in her jaw twitched, the first fracture in her mask. What planning? She said, too fast, too sharp. I held her gaze. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't curious. I wasn't afraid of being wrong. I know about the folder. There. The grenade without the explosion. Jessica didn't gasp, didn't cry, didn't scream. Her response was worse. She froze. Completely. No blink. No breath. Just stillness, like a predator deciding whether to flee or attack. When she finally spoke, the words came coated in venom. You went through my private things? Not what folder. Not what are you talking about. Just a counterattack aimed at guilt. Classic Jessica. Turn exposure into accusation. Yes, I said, unbothered. I did. She blinked, stunned. She wasn't prepared for ownership of the action. She expected shame, something she could weaponize. But I wasn't handing her that. You had no right, she hissed. I had every right. You were planning my removal like I'm a piece of furniture. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her brain was recalculating, sprinting through every angle she'd practiced in her head. The emotional scripts, the victim speeches, the curated tears. But those lines only work when the other person still clings to doubt. And I had none left. Finally, she spoke. Quietly, slowly, each word sharpened like a blade. You always twist things. You always assume the worst. You never trusted me. It was impressive, honestly. She turned betrayal into my failure. A verbal sleight of hand. Jessica, I said softly, you wrote copies of conversations you planned to have with me. You rehearsed them. You outlined how to manipulate mutual friends. You mapped out how to make me look unstable. Her face went white. You misunderstood, she whispered. Then explain it. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. A goldfish struggling for oxygen. It was hypothetical, she finally blurted. A mental exercise. Everyone does that. No, I replied. Everyone does not write timelines for replacing their spouse. Silence. Not peaceful. Toxic. She slammed the spoon onto the table. Fury replacing panic. You weren't what I needed anymore, she snapped. I tried to make it work, but you're stagnant. You don't inspire me. I deserve more. There it was. The truth didn't spill out. It strutted. So Ryan inspires you? I asked. For a split second, she lost composure so completely that it was almost beautiful. Her eyes widened, pupils dilated, breath hitched. The expression of someone whose hidden world had just been dragged into daylight. You went through my phone, she accused, voice trembling with rage. Not guilt. I went through my marriage, I corrected. Your phone was just where you hid the pieces. Jessica stood, shaking. You don't get to turn this on me. I didn't turn anything, I said. You built it. I just opened the door. She stared at me then, not as her husband, not as her partner, but as the obstacle between her and the fantasy life she'd constructed with another man. Her voice dropped to a low, venomous whisper. You were never enough. Once, those words would have shattered me. Now, they clarified everything. I stood, matched her stare, and spoke calmly. Maybe, but I was real. Her lips trembled, furious and speechless. I walked away, not because I was defeated, but because the moment a lie runs out of script, the truth has already won. And Jessica, for the first time, had nothing left to say. Jessica didn't speak to me for 3 days. Not because she was hurt, not because she was processing, because she was calculating. Silence was her last battlefield, and she wielded it like a weapon. Every step she took around the house was theatrical. Doors closed a bit too firmly. Drawers opened with unnecessary force. Footsteps timed to communicate disappointment without using a single word. She wasn't punishing me. She was rehearsing the next phase of her narrative. In her mind, she was already telling people, he became cold. He withdrew. I tried everything. He pushed me away. She wasn't reacting to what happened. She was preparing her version of it. But the funny thing about narratives is this: they're fragile when the other person finally decides not to play their assigned role. On the fourth morning, as she stood at the mirror applying makeup like armor, she finally broke the silence. "Ryan is just a friend," she said, without preface, without context, without emotion. Not good morning, not can we talk, just an opening statement, as if a courtroom had been convened in our bedroom. I leaned against the doorframe. Friends don't need exit plans. Her hand paused mid-eyeliner stroke. A microsecond glitch, then continued. "You misread everything," she insisted. "You always look for betrayal where there isn't any. Always look for betrayal." As if I conjured the folder she wrote. As if I forged her messages. As if I created Ryan. Jessica was rewriting history while I was still holding the receipts. "Jessica," I said, "you documented a step-by-step guide to getting rid of me like I'm a subscription service you forgot to cancel." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them, as though I were the unreasonable one for quoting her own handwriting. "You're being dramatic," she replied. "There is something deeply disturbing about someone who can commit emotional murder, then treat your bleeding as an inconvenience." I walked toward her, slowly, not threatening, simply present. She flinched anyway, not because she feared me, but because she feared what she couldn't predict. "Tell me something," I asked. "When did you decide I was temporary? Before Ryan or after?" She froze, mascara wand suspended midair. Her eyes shifted barely, but enough, toward the floor. That was my answer. I didn't need words anymore. Silence tells the truth when liars run out of oxygen. She inhaled sharply. "I shouldn't have to justify my feelings. That's what liars say when the facts aren't on their side." "You don't," I replied. "But you do have to own them." "No," she snapped, spinning around, voice rising. "I don't owe you anything. I spent years suffocating in this marriage. You think you're some incredible husband? You think showing up is enough? You don't listen. You don't grow. I needed more." There was the thesis statement of her betrayal. Not regret, not remorse, just entitlement. "I wasn't a prison," I said quietly. "I was a home you decided to vandalize." Her face contorted, not with sadness, but rage. Not because the metaphor hurt, but because it was true. "This is exactly why I was planning to leave," she hissed. "You twist everything to make yourself the victim." I stepped closer, voice low, steady. "You didn't plan to leave, Jessica. You planned to erase me. You even outlined how I'd respond so you could control the story. You weren't ending a marriage. You were engineering a narrative." Her breath caught, not from guilt, but exposure. She'd never expected me to understand her methods. Manipulators don't fear confrontation. They fear comprehension. Because once you see the blueprint, the house of lies collapses. Suddenly, something shifted in her expression. The denial died. The pretending stopped. The mask, the rehearsed innocence, the calculated tone, all gone. What remained was raw, unfiltered resentment. "You were never enough for me," she whispered, venom dripping from every syllable. For a moment, the room fell silent. And then, unexpectedly, I smiled, because for the first time in this entire nightmare, she told the truth. "No," I said. "I was too much, too real, too inconvenient. You wanted a man you could replace, not one who would recognize your schemes." She stared at me, stunned by a version of me she never expected to meet. A version who wasn't begging for validation or drowning in self-doubt. The version who finally understood the enemy. "You can leave if you want," I told her. "You already rehearsed it. But this time you won't control the ending." Her voice trembled. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, walking toward the door, "I won't be the man who collapses in your story. I'll be the one who finishes it." She didn't follow me. She didn't speak. Because for the first time in our marriage, Jessica realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was done letting her stay. Jessica always believed endings were hers to dictate. In her mind, she was the narrator, the heroine, the strategist, the one who would decide when and how everything collapsed. She thought I was just another character in her story, too slow or too sentimental to notice the plot she'd been writing behind my back. But stories don't belong to the one who starts them. They belong to the one who finishes them. The day everything broke wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. There were no screaming matches, no glass shattering, no dramatic exits with slammed doors. It was quiet, painfully quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't exist in arguments but only in endings. It started with a single envelope. I left it on the kitchen island, the same place she'd once left cute notes, grocery lists, lipstick smudges from rushed mornings. Except this time, the envelope didn't hold affection. It held consequences. Divorce papers. Her name neatly printed beside mine, not as partners, not as halves of something shared, but as opponents. Jessica entered the room just as I was pouring myself coffee. The moment her eyes landed on the envelope, something primitive flickered in her gaze. Not sadness, not regret. Fear. Real fear. Ethan? She breathed, stepping closer, voice trembling. What is this? I didn't look at her. I stirred my coffee instead. An exit plan, I replied. Yours was missing one thing, my signature. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. The man she planned to leave was soft, confused, and pliable. The man standing before her was none of those things. You're overreacting, she said finally, her voice cracking like ice under weight.
No, Ian Suarat. I'm responding.
Her lip trembled, a performance glitch, because she hadn't rehearsed this version of events. She'd prepared for tears, chaos, pleading, breakdowns. She'd never once considered I might choose dignity over devastation. You can't just... She gestured helplessly, searching for words. You can't end our marriage like this. You ended it months ago, I said. I'm just making it official. She walked toward me, hands shaking. We can fix this. We can talk. You're acting like someone who read your notes? I cut in. Her face turned ghost white. You treated me like an obstacle, I continued. Not a husband. You built an escape plan that required my ignorance. The moment I stopped being blind, you lost control. Tears finally formed in her eyes. Not from grief, but panic. Jessica didn't fear losing me. She feared losing the narrative. You don't understand, she whispered, voice trembling. I wasn't sure what I wanted. I was confused. Ryan was a contingency, I said. A replacement part. A new character for a story you hadn't finished writing. She covered her mouth, finally speechless. I'd seen Jessica lie 1,000 times. But this was the first time she didn't know which lie to choose. That's when she tried her final weapon, remorse. She stepped closer, tears streaking her cheeks, voice cracking into desperation. Please, Ethan, don't do this. I made mistakes. I was scared. I didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't move, because I finally realized something. She wasn't crying for me. She was crying for the life she couldn't manipulate anymore. You weren't scared, I said softly. You were bored. And bored people don't fix, they replace. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a stage. She shook her head violently. No, that's not. You don't love people, I continued. You curate them. And when they stop fitting the version you want, you edit them out. For the first time since this nightmare began, Jessica's mask didn't just slip. It shattered. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Not because she lost me, but because she lost control. I picked up the envelope and held it out to her. This, I said, is the ending you didn't plan for. She didn't take it, because for once in her life, Jessica wasn't choosing the ending. As I walked toward the door, she called my name. Not with authority, not with venom, but with something she'd never used honestly. Weakness. Ethan, wait. I paused, not to reconsider, not to soften, but to deliver the one truth she could never rewrite. You wanted a world without me, I said. Congratulations. Now you have it. Then I stepped outside. The air was cold, but my chest felt warm. Not with triumph, but with freedom. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. And what I learned was simple. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It ends the moment one person decides the other is disposable. Jessica didn't break my heart. She freed it. And sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying someone. It's walking away before they get the chance.